record today's presentation, and we will offer closed captioning as the presentation goes along. I think you should be getting a notification now or a request now to allow this to be recorded. If you don't agree to that and don't consent to that, I think it will, the Google Meeting will remove you from the room. So just as a heads up, if you don't want to be seen on camera, you can turn your camera off. You don't have to be part of the recording, but we just want to make sure we capture this for later audiences. It looks like we do have a few more people joining us too, which is awesome. Okay, so again, this is going to be recorded. There will be closed captions. We ask that you just go ahead and mute yourself, and if you have any questions, you can type those in the chat box as we go along, okay? Okay, so I'm going to repeat some things here. Apologies for that. But today we're going to be discussing college expectations and online etiquette, especially as you're very aware, so many things have changed, and a lot of our class offerings are going to be online or virtual this semester. We just want to make sure we're sending students into this semester with a good understanding of how they can thrive and be successful in that environment. And again, my name is Tessa Weisenborn, and then we also have with us Mrs. Renee Martinez. She's going to be facilitating for us today. So she'll be watching that chat as questions come in. And she is the Director of Advising. So if you have questions or need to stop in the Advising Center, you'll probably see one or both of us there. And so we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So a recurring theme that will kind of come up through this in college expectations is going to be the theme of self-advocacy. And so what that's really about is just coming into this environment and making sure that you are vocal about your needs and seeking out services and seeking answers to questions that you might have. The first two things I wanted to cover here are the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so if you're familiar at all, like if you ever had a 504 or an IEP, or if you have a child or a student in the K-12 schools who has a 504 or IEP, this is kind of similar to that, where if you have a medical impairment or a disability of any kind, the college can try to align accommodations or services to help make sure that those conditions aren't a hindrance to your success. So for example, if you have low vision or blindness, if you're hard of hearing, we'll try to work with you to make sure that we have ways to make sure that you can access course material, if that's talk to text, or if that's an assistant to help you with things or things like that, to read assignments to you or read tests to you, things like that. I don't want to go into too many specifics because I'm not sure what all accommodations are available at the college myself, but I did make sure I linked here for you the link to our ADA coordinators page. That's under our Nash Community College website under Campus Life and Student Resources, but the link is here in the PowerPoint as well. And then another way to advocate for yourself, if you're familiar at all with HIPAA in the medical field, where doctors aren't allowed to give out your records and those offices aren't allowed, it's very similar once you get to the community college. So if you have a parent or guardian who wants to access your grades, or if you have a spouse that you want to help turn in paperwork or to come pick up a transcript for you because you have to work, those records cannot be released until you give the college your consent to release those records or to discuss those things. And then there is a form available under Web Advisor. So again, if you come to the Nash homepage, along the top of the page in the student portal, you'll see Web Advisor, and there's a form there. So especially like I've said yesterday, in yesterday's call, if you're a working adult and you know that you might need somebody to come in and help you finish your registration process or turn in forms for you, or if you are getting ready to transfer out to your four-year school and you need somebody to pick up a copy of your transcript for you while you're at work, you'll need to have that FERPA form completed before any of those records can be discussed or released. So just make sure that that's one way you can advocate for yourself, okay, is to kind of give others in your support network permission to get your records. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you've gotten in, you've set up permission for people to talk, you've gotten accommodations if you need them. So what's really the best thing for you to do on the first day of class? And it's always my recommendation that students pull their syllabi for their classes and make sure that you read and understand everything in that syllabus, okay? That's where your instructor will tell you how they like for you to communicate with them. Some instructors would rather do this where they get to meet and talk with you. Some instructors are just like, send me an email, I'm not on campus. And so all of that, you can minimize frustration for yourself a little bit right out of the gate by making sure you know how your instructor prefers to be contacted, okay? How are they gonna grade you? What's the breakdown? Am I gonna have lots of tests for this? Am I gonna have essays for this? That will all be there in your syllabus, okay? And then the next thing we recommend is right out of the gate in your syllabus or as an additional attachment, there will be a course schedule that should tell you through the semester, here are what your assignments are and when they'll be due. It's always a great idea if you're old school like me and you keep a paper planner, you can get one at like Dollar General for pretty inexpensive. I like to sit down if I'm taking online courses, which I am, and right at the beginning of the semester, go ahead and write down all of the assignments for the whole semester. So that way, in a couple weeks, when my friend comes to me and says, hey, let's go out somewhere, let's get away for the weekend, we're tired of being cooped up because of COVID, I have to check my planner and say, actually, I should stay at home because of COVID and also because this essay is due, right? So it's just a good thing to do to plan proactively that way. But if you're a person too who likes and is never without one of these, right? Your student email is a Gmail-based account, so it will always give you access to Google Calendar. And that's a good place to put your assignments and deadlines too, because then the calendar, you can even set up notifications for yourself. So if you know you have a big essay due 1 week, you can set a notification a couple weeks in advance to kind of remind yourself, hey, I should be researching and getting ready for that, okay? Even in the virtual and online environments, attendance is required, if that makes sense. We are an attendance taking institution. So if it's a virtual class, you will have basically seated sections. You'll just be seated in front of your computer like this. But if it's pure online, what the instructor will do is look at your work submitted. So it might be a discussion board every week. It might just be your quizzes for the week. And again, that's going to be in your syllabus. But if you go 2 weeks in an online class where you have not submitted work, an instructor will administratively withdraw you for non-attendance, okay? So just make sure that you're getting your work turned in every week. Obviously, you want to succeed in class anyway, but that for in addition to your grades, your work will count as your attendance in the online class, okay? So just make sure you're aware of that. Go on to the next slide. I'm just going to pause here to remind you all too, if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to put it in the chat there, okay? So we talked about how if you miss work or you don't submit work for 2 weeks, your instructor will withdraw you. It's just a good idea to keep in mind too that while withdrawing from course, being withdrawn might not impact your GPA, it can still have an impact on your eligibility to receive financial aid. Your GPA will also be factored into that as well. And financial aid can tell you more of the specifics, but obviously you want to try to strive to maintain at least a C average, because if you're wanting to transfer out to a 4-year school, you need to see you're better in all of your courses for that to transfer out. But additionally, that's tied to federal guidelines for financial aid. So you want to strive to maintain that C average, C and above, obviously, for your financial aid eligibility. And I've included a link here too to assist you with monitoring your GPA. It's a good idea each week to check into your Moodle and just kind of see, all right, what's my grade looking like? How am I doing in my courses? But then also at the end of the semester, you can kind of start looking at what's my overall GPA. You should be able to see that in a Viso or on your college transcript in a Viso. But then you can also kind of be monitoring. So let's say you're at the midterm and you kind of want to see, all right, if I finish this with the B, if I finish this with the C, what's that going to do to my GPA? So you can keep a good feel for your own completion rate and GPA. Okay. And so the main thing too, when it comes to if you're concerned at all, you will miss work, or if you especially while we're online and remote, let's say something happens and you lose internet service, or you something we say in the college, life happens, right? I'm sharing my laptop with 3 siblings, and my youngest one decided that it would be fun to throw it across the room and break it. Right now, none of you have a computer, so you're trying to figure that out. If you can use a smartphone and send an email to your instructor that way, or campus will be open, so you can use the library and computer labs, but it's absolutely vital to be in contact with your instructors. The more I advise students, the more transparent you are, the better off you'll be. Just because if an instructor knows that you're going through a hardship because life happens, then they can work with you, and it's better that they know ahead of time than for you to miss a week of work and then come back in and then miss some more and then come back in, and then they find out at the end of the semester that there were all these extenuating circumstances or other issues, and it's really hard for them to try to make up and adapt to that, if that makes sense. So just make sure you're staying in touch with them. And the most underutilized resource, I think, for students are office hours. Instructors are required to have them. If that's virtual like this, some I think some are doing on campus where you just wear a mask and you can come in. But the instructors have to have them. And if students don't come, then they're just kind of sitting in their office and grading and whatever. But that's what the office hours are for you to come in. So if you need additional help, and hey, I didn't understand why I got this wrong on my essay, or I didn't understand why you docked points on this test, make sure you attend those. And I always recommend that to students too, because if you attend those, an instructor knows, hey, this person's being proactive, this person's seeking out my assistance. At the end of the semester, if you're sitting at that 79.47, maybe they'll help you out and push that over to the 80 for you. I'm not going to promise that, I can't, but I just always like to put that in there, that in addition to you helping lower your frustration because you feel like I can't get help and nobody's here and I'm all online, attend to those office hours, get the help, reduce your frustration, advocate for yourself. And then hopefully that pays off a little later too, when the teacher knows that, hey, this is a person who's really trying. So if that makes sense for you guys, go ahead and ask for the next slide there. Obviously in an online situation and virtual situation, the temptation is large to copy paste an answer, to find avenues that oh, this information is out there online, I can just pull it from here and put it in and pass it off as my own work, or talk with other students. And but we have a policy against that. That's against our academic integrity standards, and I've linked our student handbook there on page 61 where that's discussed. If you are found to be cheating, or if your work is found to be plagiarized, if you're found to be doing anything that is dishonest in submitting your work, in the first incident, you'll receive a 0 for the assignment. The next would be an F in the course. And the third, if you're caught a third time, could lead to the suspension or expulsion from the school. So it's worth it to learn proper citation guidelines. I've put a link there for you for the Purdue Writing Lab. So if you are going to use source material, that's permissible, especially if it's supporting your own thoughts and your own perspectives. But just make sure that you know how to properly attribute any work you're including to the original author or to the original source, okay? Because especially if you're doing research and finding that information out there, you don't want to lose credit or lose points because it just wasn't cited appropriately. We do have tutoring, which we'll talk about here in the next bullet, but if you need additional support, I'm not sure how to do this, or this feels like I paraphrase this. Is this plagiarism? Am I going to be cited for this? You're absolutely welcome to work with tutors on campus and Smart Thinking as well. But we'll talk about a little bit more about that in just a minute.
Can I jump in here about the academic integrity? So a lot of students think that you can only be caught with academic dishonesty with English papers or history papers or something related to an essay, and that is not true. So be careful doing discussion boards. Don't copy and paste the answer to a discussion board into the discussion board question if you're taking an online course. Do not ask your friend for their math homework and copy their math homework, because that's academic dishonesty as well. So I just want to make sure that a lot of times people only think it deals with papers and essays, but it's anytime you submit anything that is not your original work, you can fall into that category of academic dishonesty, and we definitely don't want to see any of y'all do that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Absolutely, good point. And I think I'm kind of in that same vein. That's why I was like, oh, here's Purdue OWL too, because I definitely think of essays. My background being an English teacher, but so just as a general rule, so as you're thinking, a lot of times if we're talking about academic dishonesty, what happens is students haven't really anticipated how much time their work might take, and they get down to the wire, and rather than not turn anything, they will want the temptation to copy and paste and just submit something can create a lot of those problems. So that's why, just as a general rule, we advocate that you plan to spend 2 to 3 hours per week working on your class for every hour spent in class. So for example, let's say you're taking Psych 150, it's Intro to Psych, it's a 3-hour class. You should plan on 9 additional hours of reading, researching, doing the writing, and submitting your work. Okay, so just try to think your way through that. So as you're putting these assignments, as you're putting work into your planner, into your phone, maybe doing like a block schedule for yourself, so you know, okay, Monday's going to be my day because I don't have to work, and the kids are going to be with grandma and she's going to help me out while they do virtual schooling. I can put 9 hours here solidly into this class. Things like that. So just kind of being proactive to help yourself be successful in that class and prevent any temptation or chance for you to be swayed to be dishonest. Okay. And so again, just kind of circling back here, if you want someone to review a paper for you, if you are struggling in math and you want to go grab your friend's homework, we do have tutoring services available. They are working, I believe, on campus and virtually right now. You can set up appointments with them, and Mrs. Martinez is going to show you where that is on our student resources site. So it's down towards the bottom. You can click the link there. I've got my slides, so I can't see where you're at. But there, it'll show you ways for you to make an appointment. Their campus hours, an email address. You want to schedule a live session, you can email those addresses and set up an appointment with them. You'll see a link there too for Smart Thinking. Smart Thinking also has a component where you can access virtual tutoring, and I believe if it's not through Smart Thinking, it might be through SAS Interactive Resources, right? Where they can, where you can upload a document for a review. Is that under SAS, Mrs. Martinez? I can't remember.
I couldn't unmute myself. Sorry. So yes, Smart Thinking, you can upload assignments. You can also make appointments with instructors. So if your work schedule and our tutoring schedule don't mesh up, but Smart Thinking may have an online tutor that's available during your hours of availability, so that's good. I have not used the SAS resources as much as Smart Thinking, but students have gotten very good feedback from Smart Thinking. So if you need something other than what our tutoring services provide, then I highly recommend that. And I was just noticing, these are the hours from the fall semester. So make sure you use the email addresses provided to see if they are when they're going to update for the spring semester. So that's something else to be aware of as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. But also under that, the student resources page, and I would encourage you to spend some time exploring that. There's plenty of resources available for free to you as a student to help address. And to me, it's wild to think that the range of issues that can be addressed even through the community college. We have a food pantry you can visit. There's a basically like a clothing closet is what they called it at my church. I can't think of what we call it actually. I think it's the Eagle's Nest. But free counseling that's anonymous, and again, you don't pay for it at all. If you're feeling super stressed and overwhelmed, if you feel isolated because we're working from home or things like that, you can talk to someone and just get some support, so that way when you do sit down the next time to do your work, there's maybe a little less brain fog, so you can focus on what you're doing because you've talked to someone about some of these other ongoing issues. And there's also a link to course readiness and study skills. So if you feel like I'm trying my best and I don't know why I don't feel like I'm improving, you can talk and work with someone to help you improve your study skills as well. So I definitely encourage you to spend some time on that resources page and just see, because I mean, they can make referrals to help find childcare. They can help make referrals to find transportation access. We might be limited in some things, but there's just a breadth of and a wealth of resources there that I never knew about when I went to college. So I'm a huge fan. Would advocate. 5 out of 5 stars. Would go again to student resources. But Mrs. Martinez has dropped that link in the chat for you too. If you want to go ahead and click that and bookmark it for yourself so you can get to tutoring quickly or to those resources and find them fast. But that link is in there for you guys. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing because I'm stuck on gushing about our resources. So again, on the first day of school or the first day of class, you want to be ready for attendance, be ready to log into Moodle. And in many courses, in addition to your textbook, you'll have what's called an access code. So you might have to go to an outside website and log in with this access code to get access to the rest of your courses or the rest of your coursework. This should be purchased at the bookstore, or sometimes you go to the website and purchase it through that, but you'll have to, again, follow your syllabus. And if you have any issues, make sure you contact your instructor. If for some reason your access code isn't working or the link to the course page isn't working, the first point of contact for you is going to be your instructor, because they have a contact at their company that they're working with. They should be able to get some additional assistance, or can maybe tell you, oh yeah, here's the link you need. I sent you the wrong one. They have to update those each semester usually. So just if you're having any issues with that, make sure you contact your instructor. Okay. And so I'm going to add something in here too that's not on the slide. On the first day of class for an online class, especially, or your virtual classes, when you log into Moodle, so your courses should populate. If you go to Moodle right now today, you might see last semester's classes, or you might not see anything there at all yet. But on January 11th, your classes should populate, and the first thing you'll want to do is what's called the Enrollment Verification Assignment, or EVA. And that usually it's just a couple of questions and it's pretty straightforward. But that's basically like attending, showing up for your first day in class. Okay, so make sure you go ahead and do that enrollment verification assignment, because you don't want to start doing the classwork and filling out quizzes and getting a head start and then not have that done and be faulted for not attending. Okay. So just make sure you do that. So we'll go ahead and move on to something called online etiquette. So in like every movie or series, there's always a scene where somebody goes and they have to go to a work dinner, and they have to go somewhere to this fancy restaurant they've never gone to, and there's like all of these forks in front of them, and they're like, oh no, what do I do? And so if you don't know what etiquette is basically that. It's these set of rules in this environment, in this setting, this is what I do, right? I have to napkin here and I use this fork here. So online, we call it, you might hear called netiquette, but it's basically just some general practices to avoid unnecessarily offending someone, to avoid getting yourself in trouble, and to just being a good citizen online, or being a good student in the online world. So just some brief, we'll go ahead and hit the next slide there. We'll go ahead and just some brief rules that the biggest thing I think is going to be email, especially while if you have additional questions outside of class you want to send to your instructor. If you need a new schedule for the next semester, you'll email your advisor. If you have questions for financial aid, you might get a fast response by emailing them. So knowing how to compose effective email is going to be one of the most beneficial for you. So starting with your subject line, especially if you're emailing an instructor, and they might have more specifics than this in their syllabus, so make sure you review that. But as a general rule, it's a good idea to make sure in your subject line, you go ahead and put that course name and section number, your name, and then your concern. So every teacher might be teaching 4 or 5 sections of the same class. They might have English 111-01, English 111-02, English 111-03. And if they get an email from Tessa and Tessa says, hey, I'm in your English 111 class, then they're going to say, which one? So just kind of get in the habit of making sure that they can find you faster. Because if you want to say, I'm really not sure why I got this C on my essay, respectfully, Tessa, then they're going to be like, they're going to respond with, well, I need to know which class you're in, which section you're in, which area you're referring to. So if you really want to cut down on the back and forth, make sure you're maybe trying to anticipate what is that person going to need to get me the answer I'm looking for. Kind of have to think a couple steps ahead. If you're emailing an advisor or financial aid, campus offices, it might be a good idea to also include your student ID number so they can look you up in the system a little bit faster that way as well. And your subject line then, obviously, if you're talking to an advisor or a campus office, wouldn't have a course number in it, but try to make sure you kind of maybe give them a preview of your concern. So put an example here of like the spring schedule or my scholarship application. So that way they can kind of start anticipating, okay, well, I'll need to go to this record system or I'll need to have this data so that I can address the student's concern. So just thinking about a subject line that really gives the reader an idea of who you are, what you're looking for, what you're hoping to accomplish in that correspondence. And that way, again, it's in your best interest because you're trying to cut down on, we're going to email back and forth, and you're still not getting the answer that you need. So just trying to think about who's the recipient and what are they going to need to help you. Okay. So next we'll talk about the body. So just as clear as you can, concise as you can, but still being detailed, giving them the information they'll need and being respectful. Just like in text messages or on Facebook, if you can, avoid all caps. You don't want to be that guy who looks like they're yelling or overly angry in an email. Because again, think about the recipient. If they get an email with all caps in it, are they necessarily jumping to be the most helpful if they feel like they're being yelled at? Remember that sarcasm doesn't translate well via text, things like that. Sometimes you might mean a thing as a joke, but without them, the recipient, having the benefit of hearing how you say a thing, sometimes that won't come off right. So just consider that, you don't have that advantage. So be careful how you compose things. Read it back to yourself, and how would that sound if you didn't know you, you didn't know your intention. Does this sound like I'm being mean or hostile or rude? And if it does, can I change that? Utilizing good grammar, especially if you're corresponding on your phone, it can be really tempting to treat an email like a chat or to treat it like a text message. But if you're dealing with the college and you're dealing with an instructor or a college office, think about it as a professional correspondence. So you want to think about good grammar, using a greeting and a salutation, identifying who you are, and just making sure that you communicate as a professional and as a college level student, so they can work with you, and you don't have to come across a communication barrier to try to get to the actual topic at hand, if that's your tests or your grades or your financial aid, whatever. Okay. So just a little bit more about what might be in the body. Again, consider that whatever you're sending is going to a person who doesn't have the benefit of sitting in the room with you and knowing what you've done. So especially if you're experiencing any sort of technical issues, because I'm sure everybody's called IT, right? Oh, well, did you try turning it on and turning it off? Did you try plugging it in? Did you and unplugging it? Did you try? And they have to do that. That's what customers make them do. But in an email too, you have the advantage of cutting down on that. Dear sir or madam, yes, I am having this issue. Or your instructor, I looked in the syllabus and I can't seem to looked in the syllabus. I've reviewed the Moodle course and the instructions there, and I can't seem to find the assignment deadline for this, or this. So really kind of preemptively, again, cutting down on the headache that you might have of bouncing back and forth emails, giving them the information they need to address the concern with you. I am a huge proponent of including attachments, especially like screenshots. If you're having a technical issue, let's say with one of those access codes, if you can take a screenshot or grab a screen grab of what issue you might be having or what the feedback is, what error message you're seeing, then that might help the recipient know, okay, because they can read what your screen says. I know what, that might get them to the response you need faster. It's always a good idea if you're writing an essay or an email to go ahead and reread your email, and just remember, if you wouldn't say what is in that email or what is going on that discussion board, if you wouldn't say that directly to a person, or if you wouldn't feel comfortable if it was read aloud to somebody else, then you probably shouldn't include it. I've had somebody say, if you wouldn't want it read in a courtroom, not saying that you're ever going to be brought to court, right? But just thinking about any email that you send or anything that goes up in a classroom, a virtual classroom, you don't necessarily, think about just how you would want that to be received. And if it were taken to an outside audience, would you be comfortable with what you put being read to them and being judged as a representation of your work, or judged as a representation of how you communicate with other people? And if you're not okay with that notion, then revise. Okay, it's never too late in life for literature to revise, right? So just be cognizant of that is a good idea, especially at the college and beyond too. So on the next slide here, and I just made this up today, but there's a sample email. So again, in that subject line, if this is going to an instructor, I right away put the course and that section number. The section number are those weird kind of little codes at the end. It might be B43 or B22. Just make sure you give them that additional information. I just use my first initial and last name. A last name like Weisenborn, generally, there's not too many of us. And then a brief summary of what my question might be about. Again, there's a greeting, hello, Dr. Hood, identifying myself, what course I'm in, and then going on into the question. Then the last paragraph there, I have reviewed our course notes and the details provided about the exam. Could you please tell me, okay, so I'm giving the instructor background on what steps I've already taken, and then asking for exactly what I would hope to see in the response back. Could you please tell me how I could prepare for this essay? Sometimes you have to be a little bit explicit too about, this is kind of what I'm trying to get. These are the ends I'm trying to meet. Can you help me get there? Right. And then a salutation, respectfully, and my name. Respectfully, I feel like is a wonderful catch-all, because sometimes it's hard if you're like, oh, I'm not sincerely, I don't know you like that. But respectfully is a good one to use in professional correspondence. So just, if you need a template, you're welcome to use that as kind of a reference. Okay, so we're coming into the home stretch. So just some other best practices. Again, if you've made it into college, then you've played the game of school, you know what it is to be a good student, then we're just going to kind of bring that again. So now you're showing up at the fancy restaurant, there's lots of forks. Here's just some good best practices to make sure you make it through that meal okay, right? So make sure that your ID is clear. Begin with that salutation, tell them who you are. If you want to include your student ID number to someone at the school, you can. Or a way they can look you up, again, if that's a course or section number. I was in your office at such and such a date, we spoke on this day. Just a way to kind of jog the reader's memory about who you are and what connection they have to you. In discussion boards, if you're using Google Chat through your Google email, you have access to Hangouts. Try not to spam your other students, instructors, staff. Don't take advantage of that access to them by just don't send more messages than you might yourself want to receive. Your coursework is not the place for you to also advertise a business or things like that. Try not to spam people, okay? Be sure to read prior posts and discussions. Avoid repeating those points. Again, you want to be accused of academic dishonesty or cheating anyway. And, like think about in a comment thread, okay, well, somebody already said this isn't funny anymore. So just trying to avoid repeating things. Think about the internet is everywhere. So in addition to, if you're posting something that you don't want other people to see because of how you've phrased things or whatever, it's in your best interest to take that down. Also think about not sharing your personal information or a classmate's personal information that could compromise their safety. So like if you have their email, don't share out their email without first asking permission. If you are fine with setting up a time to study with somebody, but you don't want the whole class to know your address, move that to a private, more direct conversation. So just think about, keeping yourself safe too while you're out on the internet. And then just as a good rule of thumb in discussion boards and in emails, again, just like you're thinking about, okay, I want to type things and I don't want to come off as mean or aggressive. Sometimes we can read things that way and they're really not meant to be. If an instructor says, well, you didn't do your homework, what's going on? That can sound really gruff. But it might also be that they're really concerned about, hey, you didn't do your homework, what's going on? Where are you? I haven't seen you in participating. So just try as much as you can to give people the benefit of the doubt when in doubt, when confronted. If you can control your response to that, then you can maybe turn that correspondence into something more positive. Again, advocating for yourself, just trying to control your response, because if you do just assume that somebody is being mean or aggressive and then you respond to that mean and aggressively, then there might be this bigger issue that didn't necessarily have to be. So as much as you can, keep in mind that misinterpretation can happen when you don't have the benefit of the person being in the room with you, or you being in the room with them. So just try to think about things like that. And then one more slide. So while we're working from home, and if you have a virtual class where you do come to these attendance, or if you have virtual office hours or virtual tutoring, you guys have already done the first bullet, so way to go, high fives for you. But remain muted unless you're speaking or answering a question, if you're called on to speak. And that just can help cut back on feedback and distraction. It can also help cut back on bandwidth that's being used. So if we have lots of people, myself included, have slow internet access sometimes. not using as much bandwidth in the room is helpful to everybody, okay? Dress appropriately. So I know that's really hard when you're like, wait a minute, I'm at home. You can be comfortable, but try not to be indecent, right? I'm in just a comfy sweater and things like that, but you can be in sweatpants and a t-shirt, that's fine, but you know, obviously try not, just make sure there's nothing offensive on your t-shirt. If you wouldn't wear it to campus, you shouldn't be wearing it probably in your virtual environment. You wouldn't go to your public speaking class without your shirt on campus. You should have a shirt on in your virtual environment. Because I did have an instructor tell me that story. The temptation may be real to sit in your boxers or pajama pants, but consider that if you have to get up or you drop your computer or something, you don't want your classmates to see anything indecent. So again, just be comfortable, but keep yourself decent. Sorry if this is obvious information, but try to minimize distractions and attend from a quiet place. This is to your benefit and to the benefit of your classmates if you do have to unmute yourself. But definitely so you can focus on what you need to do. If you're sharing internet connection and sharing a computer and things like that, and you want a quiet place, the campus will be open. Labs in the library may be under construction, so just check the website before you come. But you can bring headphones, wear a mask, and then work from campus. If you have a laptop, you can bring that with you, so you can even find a place if you want to sit in the Midway Cafe, or up, what's upstairs above student services? What do we call that? That's not the Eagle's Nest.
I think it's just called the mezzanine.
The mezzanine. I thought they called it something else. The Eagle, like the Eagle's Landing or something.
Oh, I don't know.
I might be making that up. We just called it that. There you go, Mark. Eagle's Landing up there. But there's chairs and places for you to sit up there too if you'd like a quiet place to sit. And just, you know, just the same as you would in class, allow yourself and others to focus on the instruction. So the temptation might be real, especially if you can turn your camera off to have your phone and be Snapchatting and TikToking and learning new dances, but as much as you can, try to focus on the class. Turn that face down. I put mine on silent before my presentation today. So just kind of setting yourself up into good routines that has a place and time, and during my virtual instruction, it's not a place or time for that. And this is going to sound weird, but sit up. I've definitely read articles from Forbes and things like that that would say, don't sit on your couch if you're working at home, or don't sit on your bed if you're working from home. Well, Forbes might have the benefit of 2 and 3 bedrooms and a spare office, but most of us don't. But to that end, if you are sitting on your bed, that's fine. You can sit on your bed or sit on your couch, that's fine. But fight the temptation to lay down, because 1, you don't want to fall asleep during your class. And then 2, it's kind of weird if the instructor's got you and you're pulled up and you're sideways like this. Or at least that's the feedback that we've been getting. So just make sure that, you know, if your instructor is putting forth the effort into delivering the class, you want to make sure that you're responding in kind to that effort, and providing a good audience to them. Also, if you're taking notes and things like that, you should be sitting up so you can take notes. So those are the best rules that we've got so far. If you can think of anything else that you maybe would like to add, feel free to put that in the chat. If you have questions right now, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're going to be sharing a link with you here in just a bit to enter into a raffle, I think, or to a drawing. But before we do that, so the next slide is coming up. But before we do that, we'll have another coaching call tomorrow. So again, there will be more information about the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if you are interested in accommodations, if you know, hey, I have this or this going on, or hey, I did have a 504 when I was in high school, or things like that, you can learn more about that. Our male mentoring, or the male success coaching program, more information about tutoring, and they'll go more in depth into our on-campus resources. So again, it's worth your time to look over those, because there's just a huge breadth of things I wouldn't think a college would do. You wouldn't think that school could help you with bus passes, or school could help you with finding a shelter because you might have temporarily been put out of your home or things like that. But there's ways for them to refer you and get you to the people that can help. If we can't help you directly, we'll at least try to help you find the people that can. Okay, so be sure to check out that presentation tomorrow as well. There will be another chance to win, or a chance to enter the drawing. And so then Mrs. Martinez has put the link there to be entered in the drawing in the chat. And then on the next slide there, we'll have the URL as well as the email address for our success coaching email address. So if you're interested, I'm a success coach. Mr. Pitt and Mr. Ryerson, who will present tomorrow, are also success coaches. If you think it sounds like maybe you just want to learn more about, well, what are these coaches and what do they do? Or if you want to learn how you can have access to one. Hey, somebody to encourage me or reach out to me through the semester actually sounds kind of helpful. You can send an email there, and we'll get you more information about how to have access to a success coach. So we thank you guys for coming. Again, if you have questions, we're going to hang out here for a little bit. Please feel free to put them in the chat. And the URL is there in the chat for you to go ahead and be entered into a drawing. There's a little survey we'll have you do. It's pretty quick, pretty easy. But just go ahead and do that for us. And then we'll stop the recording, I think, so that we can also open it up for questions too. If you don't want to be recorded asking your question, we can stop that.